Every trial lawyer knows that moment. When you've built what feels like an airtight case, but you're still lying awake wondering, what will the jury actually think? Jury research was once a luxury, reserved for cases that could support a big data study bill. Not anymore. Join trial lawyer and trial scientist Alicia Campbell, empirical legal scholar Nick Schweitzer, and data guru Kevin Doran as they break down the barriers between you and the minds of your jury. This is the Fred Files. Produced and powered by LawPods.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fred Files. Of course, it's me, Alicia Campbell, Kevin Doran, Nick Schweitzer. We're all here to talk up the data talk. And I have to introduce two other types of, I don't know what you'd call these. They're Freds.
They're characters in our
Yeah, we've got
Fred universe.
I love it. We have painted snowball microphones for all of you who are not watching that have different versions of Fred painted on them by Maria Dalda here in Madrid. She's an art major here in Madrid, and I had her basically come up with ideas about what she would do. And so she went ahead and picked, I think we have one microphone that has Escher, one that has Fred as a Picasso painting. So Kevin's going to have one soon after he gets hitched, I think. So every time you join us, you'll be able to see our very unique microphones. But I wanted to give a shout out to her because she did a great job, and I don't think I effectively said thank you very well prior to this. So I know that when we talked last time, I was hounding Seton Claggett. He was going to be on, and he definitely is. I already talked to him officially, guys, so I didn't just call him out and then not follow up. So he'll be on. Kind of want to do that for anybody who's listening to these religiously, like I hope people are. But today I'm very excited because we have Eric Fong. We have Eric Fong, who is known in my house as the data beater. The data beater, which is quite a trophy, I must say. So we're very excited to have you and hear you talk about all the things data related and then just about you because you're a wonderful person. John and I are so thrilled that we've gotten to know you so well. Everything that you do in the courtroom is just amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to let you tell people a little bit about yourself, Eric, and then we can get started after that talking about either one case or both cases that you've run through data and beat the data with.
You know, it's probably a good thing that I don't understand the data, and so I don't limit what to ask. So I ask for more, and that's how I beat it.
Makes sense.
What are your two big verdicts, though, that you're just asking for, these random verdicts?
That's how you beat data. Yeah, so a $91 million premise liability verdict for a young man that walked into a convenience store that was being robbed. And then recently, a couple weeks ago, $42 million verdict for a child, now a lady, a young lady who just really got betrayed by CPS. The government just left her alone in a home where it was a house of horrors.
Those are not too bad.
Yeah, no, it is. You know, they're great verdicts, but I'll have to tell you, neither one of them would exchange their life for that amount of money, right? And if that's what the value of justice is, then frankly, those verdicts aren't big enough.
That's a fair point, I think. Where are you right now?
I'm in Forks, Washington. It's
it's the Twilight Town, right? Or
it is.
And what are you doing out there? You're just hanging out after beating data? Is this what you do to decompress after trial?
It is. I always need a recovery period. These things just take it out of me. And so I do. I just need weeks. You know, there's Paul Rivera, who I just love. He's friend, father, dear in my soul. You know, he would always tell me, you know, you celebrate your wins and losses 48 hours. Then you move on. And I can't do that. It's such a physically and mentally exhausting endeavor that I just need to refocus to refill my soul, you know, regenerate me. And so I go to the nature. I go to the earth.
That's so cool.
That seems to help.
Oh, it absolutely helps. You know, if you're not centered, not to get woo-woo and kind of out there, but to be effective as a person, as a trial lawyer, as a father, as a mother, as a friend, you have to be centered. You have to kind of know where you are in this moment. And you have to be at peace and calm. And unless you have that figured out, you know, the fogginess, the resentments, the jealousy, the anger, the second guessing, the, you know, what about me, you know, the pity party, it can overwhelm what's going on here? And so for me, it's really a spiritual practice to center myself to be an effective person and available to other people.
So how do you deal with
I
that?
totally agree with that.
I do too. How do you deal with that though when you are in trial?
Great question. I make it a priority. I make it a priority to disconnect from the madness of it, because I find a really peaceful, powerful place nearby, and I go and just get lost. I'll bring my dog, my headphones, and I'll just take off and walk. And so this last trial was in Eastern Washington, which is kind of not my, I'm not too familiar with the place. And I found this, it's beautiful. It's a really rugged country. And I found a park, and whenever I could, I would just tell the team, you guys, I'm taking off. I'm just leaving. And I'd go for walks, find a river, sit and stare, think, meditate. What I would say is, when we're in trial, there's so many thoughts that are racing through us. And those are actually somewhat counterproductive. The jury isn't having this many thoughts. The judge isn't having this many thoughts. And if by the time we get to trial, we haven't simplified the case to the point where we can effectively knock out each thing that we have, we're in big trouble, right? It has to be the preparation in advance allows you to maintain a peaceful mind so that you're at the space where the jury is. We're meeting the people where they are. We're not coming in with all this bombastic energy that we have to unload. It has to be a mutual experience. And so for me, to tie it up, I have to be relaxed to be safe in the courtroom.
And so what do you do? Does that affect how you work up a case? Does that affect how does that work when you're thinking about being on a juror's level when you're in presenting? I mean, obviously the order of proof, how you're presenting it, but how do you take that? I assume you take that perspective all through the litigation.
Well, are you familiar with role reversal?
Yes.
For those of you that are not, I kind of grew up in the Jerry Spence model. Went to the ranch in 2001. Been teaching the Jerry Spence method for over 20 years. So I'm highly sophisticated with that process, right? And a big linchpin of that is role reversal and other psychodrama techniques that, the brilliance of Spence and the Jerry Spence method is using psychodrama in trial. And role reversal is really quite simple. It's imagining what it would be like to actually become someone else. Put yourself in their shoes and imagine what it's like to see the world through their eyes. And so I'm just trained. I've been doing it for so long that I can, it's just a way of my life. I'm always trying to think, oh, what would it be like to be Alicia, and Kevin or Nick or the folks listening? And when you get to that point in trial and you make it a focus, you realize the power of it. And so if things are going bad, you can be like, well, what must the juror be thinking? They must think that I completely misled them and I've been lying to them all along, and they must hate me for it. But I have to have the patience and the calmness to recognize when it's my turn, I can capture that moment and show them why I hadn't misled them and kind of get the ship back on course, if that makes sense.
It does. Can you talk a little bit about what is the Jerry Spence method, just for people who don't know? Anybody listening?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, that's a big question. Okay. So Jerry Spence, so I was 31 years old when I went to the ranch and met Jerry, and I didn't know who Jerry was. But Jerry is a philosophical genius. He's a accomplished artist. He's a best-selling author, and he's a very powerful trial lawyer. If you're like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, who's the greatest basketball player ever, right? There's the Mount Rushmore of athletes or the Mount Rushmore of presidents. Jerry Spence would be plastered up there as someone that you would have to say is one of the greatest ever, with his genius and his ability to connect. And in 1994, I believe, he reached this point in his career where he just wanted to give away his knowledge. He wanted to share it with lawyers that were fighting for a righteous cause. If you represent insurance companies and the government, you were not invited. You were never going to get a seat at the table. But if you represented people, apply, and if you get in, right, then you start then you're there for like 3 weeks in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, immersed in learning. And it's evolved over the decades. Like, we've been constantly refining It started out with Jerry and some ideas, and then, the staff would all get together and we'd talk about how can we take what he's done. Every day, Jerry would say, well, what can we do better? What do we need to change? What did we do lousy? What did we do good? And we just sit and talk about it. What he taught me every phase of trial from jury selection to closing, but that might take a while. But there's nothing like it anywhere. I can tell you that right now. Nick Rowley, he and I and Joey Lowe and Joe Freed and Betsy Green and Vicky Slater, we all kind of grew up together working this stuff and have done our own thing with it. But it all comes back at some form or another, I believe, to role reversing with other people and having the sensitivity, the vulnerability, the compassion, the understanding to connect with people at a common sense level, which all is the hinge to credibility.
With all of that, what led you to meeting John and doing data?
Well, it was one of the greatest introductions I've ever had. I have to tell you, I'm eternally in you guys, because of how it's changed my practice and my approach to cases. So I met Sean Kraget, when I met, we kind of known of each other. We met through Rick Friedman. Sean was helping me with this case. We'll call it the Tisdale case. Will Tisdale. That was the premise security case. And, I took a leap and just kind of like, hey man, we spent a weekend together, and it was one of the most exhilarating creative weekends I've ever had with someone. You guys all know Sean and just how brilliant he is and just how quickly he can slice through things and see things, like the clarity and the vision. It's exhilarating, right? To be around that kind of energy. And as I was, getting dropped off at the airport, he's like, hey, you got to freaking call John Campbell. And he's telling me about big data and and there's certain people I just trust unconditionally. If they say, jump, I'll jump. And so Sean is one of those folks. And so he gave me John's cell phone, and next thing you know, we were chatting it up, and a real friendship grew out of that. He's a lovely human being. You guys did your thing, and I read every single word of it. Some of it I didn't understand and needed to call John up and say, what in the hell does this mean? And walk me through this hourglass thing of dots.
Yeah.
And why is this red and this one's blue? But I understood it, and it's not, I don't want to overcomplicate. It's actually very simple. I'm making this like actually more of a big deal than it is. And you get it, and you can't stop reading these reports, and they're exhaustive. They're long and just packed with endless information. And so that's how I met John.
And so the first case we ran was Tisdale, right? I remember because John and I spent a lot of time talking about this case because our initial instinct, especially after watching the video, was like, this case is hard. Like, premises cases are hard, right? Because you usually have someone. Do you know what a premises case is, Kev?
No, I'll say no.
Okay.
I mean, you can.
Eric, I'm here mostly for exposition, like the characters in movies who are like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, because
It's always, I always learn something, and then later I talk to my friends like I know way more than they do about law and trial and stuff like that.
I love it. Yeah, like this is a premises case where, yeah, I mean, what Eric said is right. Who are you suing, Eric? We'll do it this way. Who are you suing?
Yeah. So Kevin, a premise, just like a driver of a car, the owner of property has a duty to talk legal terms to keep it safe. And if you're a business and you're inviting people, customers, to come into your store, and you know of something that's dangerous, you have to either warn them or prevent the danger from happening. So premise liability is just keep the premises safe. So we sued, it was this little rinky-dink, greasy gas station convenience store in one of the most dangerous parts of Tacoma. And it was a real odyssey to try and figure out who actually owned this establishment. We actually had to, not an exaggeration to say it took years, and the lawyers were like apologizing and, like, we'll figure this out, but we did have insurance on it. So we knew we'd eventually get there. And as best as I can tell, these big gas stations that sell alcohol, lottery tickets, and snacks, and a lot of gasoline are really just laundering money for the uber rich. Like they're held by financial investment companies that own the trucks that deliver it, the refineries. Like, they're all invested in these stores, and some are franchises, some are individually owned. But if you follow the money for this particular one, you go through, a $50 billion American venture capital thing, and you eventually work your way up to SoftBank. But because of the layers of corporate protection and the way they conceal each higher entity from the lower place, we basically sued, some gas station.
And the gas station, this is part of why we thought it was a hard case, is because you're suing the gas station for something that the gas station didn't do, right? Because
Yeah.
the whole idea is, hey, you need to keep it safe. But what you do have is like this third party actor that's coming in and doing something. So a lot of jurors struggle with that idea, right? It's kind of like a dram shop case where you sue the bar for overserving the person who's driving their car and hit someone. So you kind of have, and that's why this case is amazing, you kind of have this like string where you're trying to get liability, but you've got somebody who's in the center of it, as opposed to like, a motor vehicle crash where you sue the driver who hit you with the car. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the irony, of course, is the driver of the car is just a pawn in the corporate scheme of the insurance company not to honor its promise. In this case, the wrongdoer, it absolutely was the corporation. But at first blush, you see a maniac with a baseball bat attack my client, who's running up and, as the defense would say, confronting the robber with a baseball bat. Like, my guy ran up to a person in his car with a baseball bat. And so on the face of it, yeah, most lawyers probably wouldn't really get too excited about that. But I read Randy McGinn's book, Changing Laws, Saving Lives, or something like that. At the same time I'm reading that book, this case came before me. And so I was really tuned into the known dangers of the convenience store robbery after midnight. It's like it's a guaranteed thing that bad things happen at convenience stores when it gets dark and people are asleep. It's the second most deadly job in the country as a convenience store clerk.
Wow.
Yeah, number one is a cab driver. Like, you're more likely to die as a convenience store clerk than any other job except one.
Wow.
Wow.
That's crazy. I don't know that people would really know that very well.
I mean, it makes intuitive sense. I mean, it's funny because there's media portrayals of it. I mean, it kind of gives you the sense that, yeah, it would be.
The difficulty with jury trials is to make it really simple for the jury so that they're like, oh, duh, of course. And because, so 7-Eleven was kind of the genesis, the brainchild of these 24/7, 24-hour-a-day convenience stores. And they got their name because, like, back in the 40s or something like that, they created a store that was open from 7 to 11, 7 in the morning to 11 at night. And this was like revolutionary, like changed people's lives. They're like, oh my God, we can go get bread at 11 at night. And it was an instant success. At some point in like the late 70s, early 80s, they decided, well, damn, why don't we just do this 24 hours a day? The minute they did that, cop cars were showing up at stores in every city they opened up at 3 in the morning because someone was hurt or dead from a robbery. And so this became this huge, like, academic focus of like academia, in addition to the business, the government. Everybody wanted to know, well, why is this happening? Because it was no longer a coincidence. It was just compelling evidence that there's something happening. And, once again, common sense steps in and they realize you have to have light. You have to be able to see into the store. Most importantly, you have to train the clerks so that when they're confronted, just give them the cigarettes. Don't fight them. Right. And so OSHA, there's federal regulations, there's local city regulation, there's state regulation in every city, county, state in this country, that if you're open 24 hours a day, you have to take affirmative steps to make it safe. If you don't, you're negligent.
Wow. And so, I mean, I didn't know that's how 7-Eleven started. How interesting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, that really is. What made you take this case, though?
It was reading that book, Randy McGinn. And there was a homeless encampment on the gas station. It was my intern's, isn't it funny, little breaks? My intern's ex brother-in-law was my client. So she's like, hey, I think there's something going on here. This is a dangerous gas station. There's always police there. And when I visited Will I don't care how many times you see a human being like we deal in suffering, right? Like we deal with just horrors of what can happen to people. And there's certain level of suffering that no matter how many times you see it, at least for me, and I hope I never get numb to it, it shocks me. I don't know how to talk to the person. I don't know how to behave because of the presence of suffering I'm in, right? It's like, but then you also want to be kind of like normal because that's their life. But when I saw him and where he was at, and that little bit of information my intern told me, and I was like in the middle of reading this book, I'm like, I'm going to take this case on. I immediately hired a private investigator. I immediately ordered up all the police reports for the last 2 years at this address, and I knew I had a rocket ship case because this store was just dangerous, and the cops were going there every other day, and there was a homeless encampment on the property. Like it was nuts.
How was Will injured?
Ugh. His skull was split in half by an aluminum baseball bat. He got hit in the head 5 times. It's super disturbing.
What was he doing? What was going on?
So my guy, Will walks into the store as it's being robbed. The clerk is struggling with the robber who has a baseball bat, and when Will walks in, the robber gets scared and walks out. The clerk enlists Will's help and says, "Hey, call 911." So Will's on his phone and he steps out to look out the door, like, what the hell's going on? Because he knows nothing. He has no idea there's danger. And as he looks out the door, the robber is in his car. He sees his car door open and someone's in it. So Will runs up to the car, and at that point, the robber just whips out of the car holding the bat and just viciously beat, Will.
So he was just trying to help. He was calling 911, just wandered in off the street.
Doing what, instead of warning, so here's the duty to warn, right? Think about it. If you walk into a store and it's on fire, you tell the customer, "We're on fire, you need to leave." Don't say grab a bucket of water and help.
Yeah.
I wish that's a good analogy. If I'd been on it, I could have used that in that case. But you warn people. You don't enlist them to help with your problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I remember, so when we ran it the first time, do you remember how the data came back the first time?
I don't. I don't think the win rate was where we would want it to be.
It was not.
Flip a coin, like you may win this case on liability. Maybe worse than that. I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was an iffy case, which, because initially it didn't surprise us much for exactly what we were talking about, that people just see that as an independent actor. But I remember that we did a lot of work, and you did a really great job of establishing exactly what you just said, actually, which is, hey, if somebody walks into my store and it's on fire, I don't hand them a bucket of water. And that in the second version, we hit that a lot harder. The presentation you sent hit those elements a lot harder of like, hey, but I know you see this independent actor acting against Will, but the person in the store knew what was going on. The person in the store knew there was a robbery. Why didn't they lock the door and lock Will in it? Right? Why weren't there, things done besides, hey, will you go get on your phone and go back outside, since I don't know where this person with a metal baseball bat has gone?
And so I always felt kind of comfortable. To me, there were two breaches of duty that we argued. One was the failure to train the clerk in managing a robbery and having no lighting. The windows were plastered like this one. If a window is covered and a robber's not going to go into a store where everyone can look in and see it's being robbed.
Right.
They go into a store where their identity is concealed. This whole store was blocked in with posters, a cigarette cabinet. If you were standing outside, you couldn't see in. That's negligent. The other negligence was they didn't train the clerk how to handle and manage the robbery. Like those are kind of like questionable, complicated. You got to work hard intellectually to get there. But what wasn't difficult is the idea that if you know there's a danger as a business and your customer is entering a danger zone, tell them. So that was for me like where I felt super comfortable where we'd get liability. But the anger and the real juice and the outrage of this case was the failure to train and take the preventative measures to make the store safe, because guess what? That takes a lot of money and commitment by the business, right? And so that's what angers people, when a business is willing to enhance their profit at the expense of the safety of not just their customers but their employees. And so we kind of use those two to get us over the hump, so to speak. And the real difficult part was Will confronting a person in their car, right? The contributory negligence, so to speak.
And did you talk to the jurors after this, after you got a verdict?
Yeah, I did. I don't ask me what I learned or what they said. I put very little weight into those conversations. They were happy. They felt like they were a part of something important, something meaningful that they could honor within themselves for the rest of their lives. Like they worked hard and they were proud, right? That's what we want as a plaintiff's lawyer, is a jury that's committed to the cause.
Yeah.
And certainly they understood and appreciated the value of this case,
Yeah.
the importance. Yeah.
What did the judge say?
Well, there's always this professional distance that judges and lawyers need to keep, unless it's your best friend or very close friend. It's a judge that it was a different county. I'd never been in front of her before, didn't know her. It was her last trial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So you didn't get anything like, wow, we've never had a verdict like that here. Oh, wow, I can't believe this number. Did you get anything like that?
no.
No.
Not from the judge. I mean, they brought a motion to reduce the verdict, and she denied it.
Aha, good job. Good job. Had they had a
Yeah.
verdict that big?
No, in fact, the 42. So on strictly compensatory, right? Just making up for the damage that was done to the human. It's the largest verdict in Washington, and the $42 million verdict is the second largest. So I've got a little bit of pride, accomplishment, and
You should have a little more than a little.
no, I do. Look, I mean, it to work your whole life and to achieve something like that, and I've worked really hard, and I take this very seriously. And of course, it has to be a passion to throw yourself into it. I'm honored and I am proud, and of course, it feels great.
And then when was the Tisdale trial? What year was that?
2021, so 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, like right after COVID, right?
Yeah, it was actually a COVID trial. It was actually in
Oh.
a community center. Everyone was spaced, and
Oh, wow. Was that I don't know, from your experience, the trials you had done before that, was that a big change? Did you do anything differently?
well, I'll tell you that for me, and I've done a couple COVID trials. The worst thing about them is the jury selection process is radically altered, because they would distance people, so you couldn't bring in big groups of people. You had to bring them in small chunks, and the courts are always pressured for time, and everything was taking a lot longer. And so, but each individual session with the group was radically shorter, and so I really did not enjoy picking a jury during COVID, because I like to have a big group where you got to form a group, you got to establish relationship, trust, and what have you, and so that to me was the biggest impact.
Because how big was your panel?
Well, check this out. So I think I got 20 minutes per panel, okay, and they came in groups of 18. We had our jury picked with that first 18.
Oh,
I'm not lying.
wow.
I'm not freaking lying. And I was devastated. I was like, I was crushed, because there were some haters that were going to sit on that jury. One of them got COVID. Another guy was just sleeping through the trial. So in Washington, it's 10 of 12.
10 of 12.
Okay.
California, 9 of 12. Colorado, 6 of 6, right? It varies. But when you can create a group and you can have two people whose verdicts don't, your vote, if you're not with the bulk of the big group, you've got some leeway, right? And so when you shift the composition and you lose the two worst, and the alternatives step in, who are your two best, that is a big time change in group dynamics. It was extremely lucky, just dumb luck. Because if you don't have that shift, I think I still would have got a verdict, but it wouldn't have been anything close, right, to 91 million.
And so how many people, was everybody in a mask? Were you in a mask?
She gave us the option not to wear a mask. Most people were not wearing masks. I didn't wear a mask. The judge didn't wear a mask. No, I don't remember anyone wearing a mask.
How long was trial?
Like 3 weeks.
3 weeks. A COVID trial. Unbelievable.
You know, my last trial was 3+ weeks. Both of these, this last trial, I put my case on in a day and a half. Think about that. 3-week trial. I spent a day and a half, including cross-examination. Tisdale, it was less than 2 days.
Huh.
So you like take speed trial to a new level
Yep. Well, I don't know if it's to a new level, but
on a 3-week trial? Do you just let the defense like muddy everything for the next,
one of the things that Jerry taught me is part of the method, and this isn't unique to him or what we teach or do, but you turn the defense witness into yours. You convert them to prove your case, to tell your story. Isn't it true convenience stores get robbed after midnight? Isn't it true that if you have the windows blocked and you can't see in, the store becomes dangerous? Isn't it true that the stores are required to not block windows? Isn't it true this window's blocked? My expert saying that might be worth, let's say, half a point. Getting their expert to say it is worth 1.5 points.
That's right.
If 1 point is 100%, right? When you can get the other side to make your point. So at some point, if they're smart, they're like, shit, we need to just stop calling our witnesses because they are getting destroyed and they're proving, this guy's case. A lot of people will say cases are over by jury selection or opening. Maybe, maybe not. But what I firmly believe is if you want a meaningful verdict, you better know how to cross-examine someone. And then that's where the righteousness comes up. The lying by the other side and the blatant disregard of the truth.
So in the second case that we talked about, I don't know the name of that one because I think we had it as a
Hilton.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had it.
we there or something like that.
How did you get that case?
I was brought in to try it.
Wow.
By a lawyer. Yeah.
And so, how long did you work that up start to finish, or did you just come in as part of?
No, I would much rather work it up for I did it worked it up start to finish with him. His name was Talis Avalons, dedicated paralegals and associates, and worked it up from the very beginning.
Yeah, because that's a hard subject matter, to deal with day in and day out.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. We had a veneer of we had 60 people that came in from the community to be possible jurors. Out of those 60, 45 had been touched by abuse, CPS, or some kind of governmental injustice, so to speak.
Wow.
45 had been touched by abuse.
I wish I would say I was surprised by that. I'm more surprised that 7-Eleven used to only be open from 7 to 11.
It's funny with 7-Eleven, I feel like you could put a word cloud together and we all would probably see one of the top words being like, knocked over. Like you say 7-Eleven and your brain kind of goes to like getting robbed, robberies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Know? Yep. Some of the people in the focus group said you're assuming you're going to get hurt if you walk into a convenience store at night. Like, you're dumb. Yeah. Who does that?
Yeah.
How bad do you want to therapy?
Yeah.
But hearing about it, I do understand why you guys called it a difficult case at first, because my brain immediately goes to that, right? But then I also understand the third party liability stuff. Actually, this is funny because when they first had me, like when we were first talking about building focus with Fred, Eric, they were telling me as like the software developer, like, and then you get to this part where people are going to rate liability and you need to have a space for them to put a third party. And I was like, okay, I don't know what they're talking about, but sounds good, And now it's like, okay, now this makes perfect sense because it's like, I imagine being on this jury, hearing the story and having had like some personal experiences with robberies. I totally get that if someone is not trained to deal with like a potentially violent robbery, it can go so wrong. Yeah. And I also get why it's contentious because I've had this argument with friends many times. Like if someone comes to rob you, like you need to give them your stuff. Like you don't need to, you shouldn't have any second doubt about if they're asking you for their wallet, you just give it to them, And I understand that there's lots of people who are like, no, I would fight them. Or no, I would do something different, So it was really interesting to hear that because I immediately thought, yeah, I can totally see why Like if this had gone through focus with Fred, I can definitely see that it would have been people ranking the third party as highly liable or, saying that they don't know what to say or how the win should go.
Yeah, Kevin, you nailed it. So as you were saying that, it struck me the irony of, we say the clerk was negligent because he's confronting the robber and not giving the cigarettes, but at the same time, our client is confronting the robber who's taking his car.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a huge kind
Challenge.
of puzzle. Yeah, huge challenge. And that's what's so fun about focus. The meaning, one of the great values of focus groups is, as a lawyer, we have a puzzle. We have a very complex picture that we have to make it and put all these pieces together so that when you look at it, you see a beautiful image, right? A trial lawyer is nothing but a puzzle solver, and we put together a picture. Of course, one of the puzzling parts of this case was my guy running after and confronting a person who's trying to steal his car with a baseball bat. What we learned, the solutions are always going to come from other people. And what better way to get, input from other people than using you guys, right? Run different ideas, present the facts, and see how ordinary people respond to it. What are they saying? And so I always get a large portion of my closing argument, opening statement, how to cross, how to do a direct, from the comments that I get from the people who see this stuff that support me and then are against me, right? The people who are against me, and I know that that's what people are going to say, of course, that's more valuable than what the people who support you are going to say. And so then once you know the thinking of the folks that are going to take your case, you can start using the data to solve the problem. And you can start tweaking framing. You can start presenting different images of the information to see how it shifts the response of someone who hates your case.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. I love it. It's
You mentioned, early on, you're talking about being grounded and kind of being clear throughout all of this. And, I think of I'm not a lawyer, but I think of myself, and kind of, it would be a challenge for me. I would be there's a lot on the line when you're doing this, and there's a lot going on in your head. And I wonder, to what extent does having studied a case and having seen what jurors might be thinking, does that help you, obviously in the strategy sense, but does it also help kind of let you have a little bit more clear perspective and just be like, okay, I know what I'm getting into here?
1,010%. And part of that is, if you're going to make the effort to do a focus group, you better do it right, because the focus group is only as effective as the information that's fed into it. And
we know that one from some studies that come through. Yeah.
I guarantee I can equal the amazement you guys have with the lack of preparation this profession is plagued with. Like, you can see the future, folks. Like, what's going to happen down the road. And if you're not ahead of the curve, you're not doing your job today so that when the trial comes, you're where you need to be. You cannot just fake it. You can't clump a bunch of information out and throw it out there and expect it to make sense. And so Nick, getting back to your point, by the time I'm done giving you what you need, I have busted my ass. Like, you're getting a highly polished, intensely thought through presentation, most importantly of what the defense is going to say. Like, I'm amazed at how much we love our cases and how blinded we are to bad facts. I spend a lot of time helping other lawyers. I'm like, well, what's the defense going to say? And they're like, I don't know. Like, what? Like, that's where you start your preparation.
Yeah, so explain that. Explain what you do, because you are absolutely right. We have the hardest time hearing, seeing, or addressing the things that defense attorneys see in our cases. What do you do to make sure you're always doing that, Eric? Because you're right. You sent very polished, great presentations where the defense is punchy and good, which is what it's going to be at trial. They're not going to lay down and just forget that they have some valid points, like, hey, your guy's going after his car. What did he expect was going to happen?
Yeah, right. So I think, one, in deposition, and you can always see the roadmap of where they're going, right? And you should be taking notes in the deposition of, oh, here's what the defense argument is. You make a list. I have I have a creative room where I use poster board and I just have, defense arguments, danger points, good facts, bad facts, 30B6 issues. Like it's covered with 20 poster boards of big topics. A lot of that is dedicated to the weaknesses of my case and respecting and being in fear of the defense's case. Unless that's your work ethic and habit and you're willing to get out of the love of your case, I don't know how you do it. Other than if you're not doing it, you should start immediately today, now.
To come up with the bad parts of your case, you do have talks with other attorneys? Do you do small focus groups? What do you do?
Well, yeah, I've been practicing law for actually 30 years. And for the last 5-10 years, this has been kind of my big learning point, revelation. And so I mean, now it's through, if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd probably give you a more thoughtful answer, because for me it's just common sense. You know what I mean? Like, so in this recent case of CPS, the government's overwhelmed. They're gonna make mistakes. You can't ask social workers to end child abuse. And then of course, the character flaws of people who go through something like this are gonna be homeless, drug addicts, don't have a job, right? It's hard to care for someone that isn't caring in themselves and they're not, picking themselves up by their bootstraps and living a healthy life for some people. So it's role reversal. I'm going to come back to role reversal, right? When we get so locked into our world and our view of the case, we lose objectivity and we become singularly focused on whatever it is that we think we want to see or what we believe. And then we start to love our cases so much. We're like, well, none of that shit matters because what I have is so great. I don't need to worry about that other stuff because the good facts are going to overwhelm all that. And we can explain it away. I'll tell you right now, if you're explaining anything, you've lost. Like evidence that needs to be explained is not good evidence.
That's great. Yeah, you're right.
And most evidence at some level, right, probably needs to be explained. And that's probably not your best evidence. Not to say we don't use it and incorporate it into the bigger picture of the case. For example, the convenience store case where a theory of liability was just the environmental safety measures that they needed to take, but it needs to be explained. It doesn't jump out at you as super obvious, but it doesn't mean we abandon that and don't use it. We incorporate it and weave it in like a seamstress to make a beautiful cloth that supports the clearer pictures of liability. And the real power of that evidence isn't explaining it to explain why they're negligent. It's showing that they're doing that to save money.
You bring up a good point. You're absolutely right about all this, I think, because we ran a case where a woman was driving from work. She worked at a prison, and she was in a Department of Corrections van. And she crossed in a intersection, and the truck driver was coming in his truck, and he saw her, took maneuvers to avoid her, but she kept coming, and he couldn't understand why. So they ended up colliding. She ended up being killed. He ended up being seriously injured. So it was kind of weird because the lawsuit was from the truck driver to the Department of Corrections because she had their vehicle, that kind of stuff. And so we ran it through big data. And sometimes you're like, damn it. Because what had happened, they think, is she fell asleep in the car. And she'd worked an overnight shift and she was tired. And so we ran it through big data and we had all the reasons, everything you're talking about, all the explanations, accident reconstructionists. And the damn jurors were like, the one thing I don't understand, why didn't he honk? And we all sat there and were like, son of a bitch. Like, oh, it's always, you're exactly right. I mean, you get a bunch of people in a room and we're all trying to think creatively, but jurors are really good at like that simple story. And I really take your point that then if you're a seamstress, it doesn't mean you have to lose all the other facts, but you better know what they're going to cut to.
Yeah. Right. And then you can acknowledge that. A lot of people would say, my guy should have honked his horn. And he wishes he would have honked his horn, but you know what? He thought he was safe when he saw da-da-da-da-da-da. But we can't go back in time, and no one can expect everyone to handle everything perfect. At least now you can take that bad fact or that reaction and weave it into, the reasonableness of what he did. So
no, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. So in this most recent one, of the 60, of the 45, how many of them ended up sitting on your jury? Do you know?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it was a fascinating process because the judge was willing to let it, at the defense's suggestion, all 45 people were brought in individually. So we spent 2 days with one-on-one contact with these beautiful people. And I'll tell you what, man, it was nuts. It was intense. I mean, you have a 70-year-old male who for the second time in his life is talking about the abuses that he suffered in a courtroom with strangers,
Oh my God.
and I'm just there like my heart is breaking for these people. Like right, so I'm reversing roles. What would it be like? The defense lawyer's like, my guess is you can't be very fair to this case, given, like da 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 da. It's just, like doing what lawyers do. And there was no humanity in it from anyone, by the way, except the plaintiff side. Of those 45, I would say that 4 or 5 of them more. Let me think. I can still see all of their faces really clear. I love my jury, and I have so much faith in the process. Which, by the way, I'll get going a little sidetracked. So many lawyers are afraid of jurors, and they bring that fear with them into the courtroom, and they're very tense, and they're clenching their arms in front of their private areas, and they're because they're afraid. And if that's what you're bringing to that moment, you might as well quit, settle for whatever they're offering, because we can read each other's body language and emotion, right? There's a parallel universe of understanding that living creatures have. And fear is certainly high at the list that doesn't need to be said, it. And so if you're not bringing the vibe of acceptance, love, and trust with a group of people as a trial lawyer, that's something you should think about. Is like, what are you bringing into this moment? Is it fear and distrust, or is it trust and compassion and love? So I love my juries, and I can remember their faces. If I had to, rough guess, um,
Half of them.
went to the one-on-one.
Wow.
Mhm.
How was your client? Did she sit through the whole trial, or what decision did you make about that?
I brought her in at the beginning of jury select, and I said, I'm making the decision that Jessica Hilden's not going to participate in the trial. This is Jessica. Jessica, stand up, say hello. Thank you, Jessica. You can leave. They never saw her again.
Did you voir dire them on that to see if anybody was going to have a problem with that, or did you just let it sit?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in opening. I mean, like, I don't think you need to explain much to a person who's been abused their whole life of the common sense of not having them sit in a trial where all they hear about is their own abuse and how they're making it up or how it happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the cruelty of making someone like that sit through a trial should speak for itself. And it's scary, right? Because lawyers are like, well, you have to have your client present. They have to testify. How else are you gonna do it? And what I would say is if you as the lawyer can emote the deep understanding of that suffering of your client, it's maybe even better than having your client get up there or what have you. It's not enough to understand the suffering. You have to feel it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so I can feel my client's suffering. Not everyone can understand, the horrors of abuse. Many of us have lived through it. But if you feel it, and that feeling can come out in your voice, in your body language, and what have you, that's powerful evidence, and the lawyer is the strongest piece of evidence in the courtroom.
What was CPS's position in this case? They were just overwhelmed. Is that what they went with? Did they do any
They
victim
did their job.
blaming? They did their job. Got it.
They did their job, and you can't believe Jessica because what she's saying is can't be true. There no doubt that she was mixed up in her memory, like every abuse victim. They don't they disassociate, and recalling even what you got for Christmas as a 5-year-old, right? You don't know. And so you try to answer a question and be honest, and next thing you know, you're a liar for it because you said something inconsistent before or something. And so they had a gold mine of, like, I had major issues to deal with on credibility and consistency of the version of abuse and who abused her and how it happened. And so they were extremely confident that would win the day.
Did you talk to any of these jurors afterwards?
Yeah.
And do you remember anything in particular about what they said about the case, or?
Not really. Not really. I mean, again, I put so little. For me, it was just a expression of my gratitude to them for their service. the sacrifice that they made, the dedication they brought to their job. That was my message to them. They talked about the process and, why they made certain decisions here and there. And it's probably what you can imagine. But it's such a complicated process that I don't think people are fully able to express accurately why what happened.
Yeah, that's true. You said that you have a lot of trust in juries. Why?
Because if I don't, I'm screwed. So first of all, I just lost a case just very recently that gutted me. And it's a case you can't lose. I've lost so many cases, I couldn't even count them for you guys. And it's hard, when you lay yourself out on the line like that. And it means so much to you to do good for your client, right? Because at the end of the day, we help people. And if you fail in helping someone and you fail in your job, and because you don't do a good enough job, that person suffers, it can be pretty traumatizing, actually. Like people quit. People just like, I can't, this is not for me. I don't want to ever do this again. But what I've realized is that as long as I do my job the best I can today, whatever happens tomorrow is not on me. And I think what you guys see a lot of, I know what you see a lot of, is you're meeting lawyers who haven't done the best they could have done yesterday. They're bringing stuff together that's not fully developed, not fully thought out, and just dropping in your lap and hoping it works out. And that's where our profession starts to show cracks, because it's really hard to pull these cases off at trial. And if I do that and I lose, I should have lost. It's just fate, because there's a huge amount of randomness to these results. And you start to realize that the system, is losses in some ways you got to lose to get it out of the way to get to your next win. It's kind of like a sports team is going to lose. But if you keep staying consistent and you consistently practice and you consistently do your job, you start to have faith in the system as a whole and in yourself. And that's a big deal, is your inner confidence, right? Like the confidence of the person that's doing their job. Look anywhere you go. If you don't have confidence, you're not going to have faith in the system. You're not going to have faith in jurors. And so it's a psychological, maybe a life coach or, someone could explain that better. But I have to trust the jury. If I can't trust a jury, then what's the point of any of this?
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, I really like ending on that. But Kevin and Nick, do you guys have any questions? Because we've been talking about an hour.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can wrap up. But this has just been, again, because I'm not a lawyer. Every time I do one of these and every time we talk to somebody, it's just astounding the amount of, I don't think people outside of the legal profession really comprehend the amount that, Eric, like you would pour into these cases that you do. It just seems like something that, you're just sitting around and you show up to court one day and talk for a little bit and, whatever happens. And it's just, I think if there are any, I don't know that we'll have very many non-attorney listeners, but, if there are any, this is just really impressive to me, just how much people care and put of themselves into this.
I totally agree. I think hearing about something that's a very human process is not very usual sometimes, and it's extremely enjoyable. Like I love hearing these stories because it's hearing about a person going through work and doing a job that's for other people, but then there's other people very involved in it, deciding what's going to happen. And, the stories are always fascinating. And then just the challenges that come up while people are doing it. And so, hearing about this today was fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad, we were able to have a good energy and conversation. I really appreciate you guys. Like I said earlier, I'm indebted to the product that you provide. There's no way lawyers that I couldn't without the objectivity of you and other people to help me get out of my particular focus. So yeah, we do sacrifice a lot. This is a brutal profession that will chew you up and spit you out, but it will also enrich you in just extraordinary ways. And, I'm just pretty cool.
Yeah. To connect something you were just saying about having confidence in your work, I think with this group in particular, like when you're building software with people, you realize that, over 10, 15 years, you get better because you know more stuff. But a lot of it is just having confidence. You're like, no, what I'm doing right now, this is not a bad way to do it, And when you meet people who have like what we call the domain of what that software is going to be about, it's always like a real kind of, it's not usual to come across people who really have that confidence in their work as well. They're like, no, this is how you're going to do this. And to be doing that with something that's new, like that's not kind of something that has hundreds or thousands of years of how people do this kind of thing. It's like, no, this is kind of a newer way of how we're going to go about approaching studying a trial before it happens, and combining that with the confidence of, we know that we're doing a good job here. This is the right way to do it. It's really exciting. So for you guys who are using this data to do these cases, it's like, and to hear about it, we don't get a lot of, for me, I don't get a lot of chances to hear about how people are using this and affecting people's lives. So it's pretty cool.
And I'm glad you're beating the verdicts that are predicted. I'm happy for you. My role is to try to make sure that we are exactly accurate. So, for me, I'm like, oh, there's something wrong. We need to do a little better. But I am, I'm very happy that you've exceeded what we thought you could do.
Good. Well, thank you so much for this beautiful morning. I really appreciate you guys and honored to share with you guys.
Oh, no, we're really, really lucky to have you. And you know what? The other thing I want you to pitch, because you should, is taking this health day. You know how many lawyers either go from one trial to the next and they never give themselves a break? And I think you're exactly right to do that.
Well, it's pretty simple. If the plane is going down and you're going to have a rough landing and the oxygen mask drops, don't put the child first. Because you're no good to your child unless you take care of yourself. Put your mask on. Take care of yourself. Love yourself. Go out for a walk and breathe some fresh air. And with every step, let the earth tell you how much you're loved and how important you are, right? For me, it begins and ends with self-care. If you're not in a good place to do this stuff, you're no good to anyone.
Yeah.
I think that's very wise. And something that with the lawyer, how many cases, deadlines, I think it's something that's very hard for people to implement. So I think it's good that you share that with them, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah. It's work-life balance.
Well, thank you, Eric, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for listening to the Fred Files. If you found value in today's discussion, please subscribe and share this episode with your colleagues. To explore how Fred can transform your case preparation, visit us at focuswithfred.com. Produced and powered by LawPods.